When I was a kid, I remember my dad drew a $5 bill. And I thought, boy, what a coincidence. How great does that look, that $5 bill? And I thought, that's a pretty good deal. So I got into drawing, and I guess because of the type on a $5 or $20 bill, or type in magazines or whatever, I'm just fascinated by it. And when I got out of high school, I went night school to Washington University. I didn't even know that they paid money for hand lettering. But I copied type fonts and knew them in my head, and I just stuck with it. And type was basically metal, and it had hard edges, and you couldn't put letters together unless you cut them apart. And I don't even know if they thought of cutting type apart totally back then. And with the advent of the typositor, which I had one of those, you could put it on film and you could space it. Rather than metal type, with film type, you could move letters touched together or ligatured or spaced out better. With the advent of digital type, that just kind of blew everything else away, and it even did away with a lot of typesetters. One of the gentlemen who taught typography, which I took the class, he worked for Gardner Advertising, and he got me a job as a paste-up boy. I was about 18, 19 years old, and they had 2 people in there that did hand lettering, and back in those days, hand lettering was more important than it is today. Both of them eventually left, and it left me in the job, and the head art director asked for the samples. I reached in my pocket and pulled out a little packet of letters and spewed them on his table, and he said, "You got the job." He didn't know I didn't know anything beyond that. But I was doing paste-ups and doing various things, a couple layouts when they had something they didn't really care about, mostly. With the fact that you could make it had movement to it like a rod and a reel, and they bought off on it, and that's how it came about. So it was just, sometimes things come to you just when they relate what the product or the business is. From that job, I got drafted in the Army about 2 years later and went to Korea. And when I came back, I went back to Gardner for about 2 more years. Well, I worked for Gardner from 48 to about 54. I started in October of 54, and I freelanced for about 2 years and worked heavily with Obata, so that's how we started Obata Design. It was just Kim and Alice Hausner, Kim Obata and Alice Hausner, and so they decided to form a studio, and Rich Haley came along. He was doing production, and I was invited to come along, and we formed Obata Design in 1956. About 2 years after that, after working with them, I went back by myself, and about a year after I was freelancing on my own, I had Don Langeneckert, who was an illustrator and left Centaur Studios, came with me to we weren't partners, but we were together and did jobs together, did a lot of layouts. We worked together for about a 20 or 25 year period. And then he decided he wanted to work out of his home where he had a studio. There was a company called Typositor, that's a company that had a contest, an international contest for type designs, and it so happened that I entered that and won an award for a typeface that I actually named after my daughter, Janet Type. So every time you do a font, sometimes it's not easy, but you usually figure out something you can come up with that's a little different, that is more interesting than just type. When I learned from watching other people do finished lettering, they would make a tracing, and then they would trace it down on they might make 2 tracings till they get to one that was spaced properly and the weights, trace it down on Strathmore, and then they'd outline it and paint it in. And all those steps took 5, 6, 7 steps before they got to it. When I saw that method, I thought there's got to be a quicker way. So I decided that first of all, I tried some what they called sandpaper blocks and cut those down to thin sticks, and then dawned on me that there's already thin sticks out there. There's popsicle sticks and so forth. This is basically what I'd start with, and I'd take a razor blade and shave it down on both sides, and then sand it to almost like it was a razor blade, and then I'd cut the width that I need, and it'd last forever. It didn't wear out very much. It took me about 6 months or a year before I could develop it. There were 3 Budweiser alphabets that I did. I don't recall if this is the one that was for the Budweiser label. Basically, this is a project that from Anheuser-Busch to reproduce and recreate the original Budweiser lager beer label and the script. But I did the before that, what they have now is the back of the script like they had years ago, but this particular one was the, I think the serif on the Budweiser alphabet. So I marked it, and if it came back, I'd have that stick that I'd know about it. My son was getting out of the art center, and he joined me in about 1980, and we freelanced together for about 15, 20 years doing packaging and logos, brand logos, theme and corporate. And then we did a lot of design work for different corporations. And then he got into another field, and I just kind of stayed with mine, and he and I worked together somewhat, but we were doing separate things also. And that's about up to date.